Boom shakalaka, what is going on, everybody? Randall here from Crypto Love. Today's episode, we are going to take a look at Bitcoin Hyperwave Theory and see, is a $1,000 Bitcoin possible? So if you want to find out more, stay tuned. What's up, everybody? Randall here. Today we're taking a look at Bitcoin Hyperwave Theory. Is a $1,000 Bitcoin possible? Tyler Jenks, RIP. Now, why are we taking a look at this? Well, last week when Bitcoin was crashing and the price went down to somewhere in the mid $3,000 area, I was asking myself, is Tyler Jenks actually right? Is it going down to $1,000? And so I started looking a bit more into Hyperwave Theory, and I'm going to share that with you today. Now, let me just preface this by saying I am no way a Hyperwave expert. I've just done my own research, and I'm going to share that with you because it is somewhat interesting. Now, among the articles that I found was one here on Medium, but just to give you an idea of what Hyperwave is, this is what a Hyperwave looks like. So we have, basically it's 7-part wave, okay? First a period of inactivity, then some interest and stronger interest, peak interest, and then we have the bear market, price falling down, a rebound, and then price going down long. Now, as you can see here, this kind of looks like what happened in 2017 and again just recently. So let's take a look more specifically what a hyperwave is. If we scroll through this article and we can find the answers right here. So Tyler Jenks developed the hyperwave in 1979. It's a simple model to explain what happens when people refuse to allow the numbers to add up. So phase one, that flat line, is a period of inaction. So that was when Bitcoin was below $1,000. It actually stayed there for 2 years, over 2 years. So in Bitcoin's time, that's kind of a long time because Bitcoin trades 24 hours a day. Then phase two was the beginning of the upward phase, and each phase people start to show more interest. So eventually when the media picks it up, that's when it really has that steep phase. And let's go take a look at it on the graph here. So if we take a look at this, first, let's take a look at the period of inactivity. So this is the line, right? This would be phase one, right around $432. You can see this here, about 2 year span where there was not much activity going on with Bitcoin. This was 2015, 2016, beginning of 2016. Then we see a pickup in the beginning of 2017. That's this first really long white line right here. That is phase two, okay? The first pickup. So we can see it bounce off there a few times. Then we have more interest starting in about May of 2017. So then we have phase three. And eventually the media starts to pick up coverage with the Novaraz buy-in in November. And we have phase four, the moonshot, before it comes down to phase five, where we have a correction. And then phase six, and the long drawn out phase seven. So you can see that's the first hyperwave. Now, generally with a hyperwave, you would expect it to come all the way back down to phase one, this red line here. But Bitcoin did not do that. As a matter of fact, it found support. Remember right here, this is phase two. Well, it found support on phase two right there, right around $3,000. Now, off of that phase two, it created another hyperwave. So it had another phase two, phase three, phase four, 5, 6, and 7. And what's shocking from that is that the phase two off of that phase two, this is what I'm saying where it got really interesting. The phase two off of the phase two, this phase two right here, off of this phase two, guess what? We found support there. And it looked like it was setting up for yet another hyperwave before the market took a tank and we dropped back down. But that brings us to where we are right now, where actually Bitcoin has found support again on this first phase two. Now, what this is called is actually a funky hyperwave because instead of returning to the original phase one, that the red line that I have here at 432 below $1,000, instead of returning to that, we actually return to a phase two or a phase three line. So right now, this phase two line that we're bouncing off of is actually very important because if it breaks through there, there is a likelihood that Bitcoin price could return to the phase one, to the $1,000 level. So that's something that I'm definitely taking a look out for, something that I'm very, very interested in because this is pretty cool stuff. So that brings us to the answer, could Bitcoin return to $1,000? It certainly could. If it breaks through here and hyperwave theory actually holds, then yes, it would be likely that Bitcoin could return to there. Potentially before the halving, because with the halving event, We have some simple economics things that are turning in. As a matter of fact, there are some articles right now, like Tone Vase, saying that $2,800 before the halving is not scary. He's thought this for a long time. He thinks it could head down there, not all the way to 1,000, but he thinks the $2,800 area is definitely reasonable. And even CZ, he's saying it's not the coronavirus that caused the crash. It's just a very, very weak economy. And we actually see that where Bitcoin broke the hyperwave right here, because people start to see, hey, you know what? The economy's just kind of been propped up. It's like a house of cards on a very shaky foundation. It's been propped up since 2008. When things stop running, you know what? Things could fall apart, and injecting money and decreasing interest rates can only work so far. Now, that brings me to my point of view on this thing, is that Bitcoin, in my opinion, is one of the better investments, even if it goes down to $1,000 temporarily. Because Bitcoin, based on supply and demand, is one of the best things out there, one of the hardest forms of money, but basically there's a decreasing supply. We see this with the stock to flow model. The stock to flow model is derived off of supply and demand. It is something that actually has a decreasing or a fixed supply, but the amount flowing in decreases. So it has a fixed supply. It reminds me a lot of real estate. There's a fixed amount of land, exponentially growing population. Same thing with Bitcoin. Fixed amount of Bitcoin, exponentially growing population, exponentially growing amount of US dollars, which makes Bitcoin seem more and more valuable. Except for this one thing. And this one thing is somewhat concerning. I actually don't know if this is going to affect Bitcoin's price, but you let me know what you let me know what you think down in the comments. And that thing is called derivatives. Okay, so derivatives are basically when you short Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin futures, different things like that. They're basically paper, or not even paper. They're just like they're taking a real Bitcoin, if you can call it a real thing, and then they're deriving something imaginary from it. So these are concerning for me, for Bitcoin, for other things. I actually don't know how they're going to affect things, but just to give you an idea of how big derivatives are, this is all the world's money in one visualization. So just to give you an idea, each square this big is $100 billion. This is the whole silver market, the whole cryptocurrency market, the biggest companies, the 50 richest people, California's GDP, the Fed's balance sheet. Okay, that includes the $3.5 trillion they added there. Not the, it doesn't include the most recent injections, but that's the Fed's balance sheet. All the currency in the world, the gold in the world, and notice how these things are big. So then we have stock markets, global money, global debt, which is big, global real estate, even bigger. But then we have derivatives, this monster, absolute monster. That look at how many of these squares it takes up. Look at how many imaginary derived things are made up. And it turns out that the higher end estimate for the value of all derivative contracts is as high as $1.2 quadrillion. Good luck wrapping your head around that type of money. But look at this. It goes on and on and on and on. And yeah, that's a lot of derivatives. And you can see right here, that's Bitcoin right there. So do these derivatives, do these futures contracts actually have an effect on Bitcoin? Certainly. But do they actually have a negative effect? Because while you can have a Bitcoin derivative, it's still not the same thing as actually owning a Bitcoin, having your own keys. That's my opinion on the things. Again, you let me know what you think down in the comments. But based on supply and demand, Bitcoin and real estate seem like some of the better investments in terms of this thing. And so that is the end of today's episode, where I just want to go over with you hyperwave theory. Is it possible for Bitcoin to return to $1,000 based on this? Absolutely. We're actually at a crucial point right now where we need this phase 2 to hold, because if that breaks, yeah, we could see Bitcoin heading down to $1,000 or thereabouts. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and I'll catch you guys later. Have a great weekend. Peace.